Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and tonight I'm joined by Mikey McNuggets of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. What's going on, Mikey?
I was just telling you before, man, anytime we try to pod together, the Cavs decide that it's going to be the worst game of all time, and they're going to give us nothing positive to talk about, and we have to be the either voices of reason or the voices of doom, depending on your personal opinion of how you want to approach these losses. But tonight was bad. There's no sugarcoating it. There's no way around it. Did you find a single positive takeaway from today? Because I'm struggling to find one. Literally,
Shit, man. No, I did not. There's absolutely nothing good that I can take away from this loss. And sometimes you just have those, but it's glaring when it happens in the playoffs, right? It's glaring when you lose by 40 plus points in a playoff game, whether it's on the road or at home. And we knew that Orlando, fresh off of basically getting their asses handed to them at points, not during whole games in games 1 and 2, but really getting their asses handed to them at certain points during those games. We knew that at home, where they often play very, very well, that we were going to get their best punch. And that's exactly what happened tonight, which coincided with some continued abysmal shooting from Cleveland. But nah, man, in short, to answer your question, there is nothing good that I can look at this game and point to and say, hey, that's a positive.
Instead of breaking down like the minutia of tonight, can we look big picture first?
Sure.
This is 3 straight games of mediocre at best offense from the Cavs. Yes. Like they won game 1 and 2, but their offense was far from perfect. They played good offensive first quarters in the first 2 games. And after that, it was hit or miss. They went through some serious scoring lulls in games 1 and 2. And the defense was bad tonight. Don't get me wrong. The defense left a lot to be desired. But if you score 83 points, and granted, they put in the backups midway through the third quarter, they were on pace to score 87 points before doing that, so I'm not giving them a pass. You're not going to win many playoff games scoring sub 90, Mac. And this is 3 games in a row where you think you see some good wrinkles they've added, and it works for a play, and they just don't go back to it. And guys who they need to make shots just aren't making shots. But this is 3 games in a row now where despite winning 2 of the 3, I've had some serious questions about this offense and their long-term viability and ability to score at a consistent basis against a Magic defense that's been really good throughout the regular season and hasn't been bad in the postseason yet.
I mean, they're the 3rd-rated defense for a reason, obviously, but Cleveland did themselves no favors. They are now, over the course of these 3 games, they're 28 of 103 from three-point distance. It's insanely bad shooting. 27.1% is what that breaks down to. And you're right. I mean, you're not getting shot making from 2 of the guys in particular that you brought in this offseason to help shore up some of the spacing concerns in George Niang and Max Strus. But it's not just them. It's frankly everybody. Donovan Mitchell at points has struggled to score the basketball and to shoot from the perimeter. Ditto with Darius Garland, who we all know isn't aggressive enough at times. And, you know, Jarrett Allen can only do so much. He has been a bright spot, at least in the first 2 games. And he came out tonight playing aggressively as well. But as a whole, it looks stagnant as hell. And when you're not getting any production from the bench, you're not getting any real cohesiveness from the starting lineup at certain points. It's frustrating, man. And, you know, I haven't lost faith from a big picture standpoint for this series. I still believe the Cavaliers will take this in 5-6 games, but tonight was a disheartening loss. And you have another one coming up in game 4 in Orlando, and you know that's a big game. That now has become a huge game.
It's funny how, and I want to try to say this nicely. People, and I'm not calling anyone out individually. I'm just saying groups of people live and die by the result every night, right? And I just saw someone tweet beforehand. Game 2 against the Warriors in the 2016 finals, the Cavs lost by like 35. Ended up winning the series. Now, I'm not comparing that 2016 LeBron James-led Cavs team to this team per se, but just because you get smoked in one game doesn't mean you can rebound and bounce back and still win a series or play much better. The Cavs got their asses kicked tonight, point blank period. And from an offensive standpoint, Donovan wasn't good enough. Darius wasn't good enough. Karis LeVert was the only guy on offense I thought that played up to the standard you would expect if not exceeding that level. No one else did. And Jarrett and Evan can't get the ball if the guards aren't creating space. They're the recipients. They're not the creators. They put in Sam Merrill, but he wasn't playing alongside Donovan Mitchell, and I don't necessarily understand that decision. If Sam's going to be in the game, I think he has to be playing alongside Donovan so he can get those open looks from Donovan's gravity on the defensive end. And
some of the best looks that we saw from Sam Merrill in January and, in that huge run were generated off of Donovan Mitchell's bending of the defense, his ability to drive and kick and just generate so much gravity out there. We haven't seen that.
No, and they tried it tonight, and he played a little bit in game one. He missed 2 shots. JB took him out. Tonight, he was playing with Darius. Orlando made the adjustment. They put Suggs on Donovan, and I think that took Donovan out of his rhythm for a while. And then once the game got out of hand, he tried to single-handedly bring them back in late in the second quarter. I think he scored 7 points. He had the and one on Paolo. He had the jump shot. But it just wasn't enough because anytime the Cavs made a tiny bit of a run, Orlando counterpunched with a bigger run and just extended the lead more and more. They put Thompson in. They put Marcus Morris in. JB tried everything. And nothing worked tonight. And that goes back to what we started with, Mack. Like, I don't know what the positive to take away from this is because it was a bad loss, but they're still up 2-1. And game 4, if they win game 4, I think everyone feels pretty damn good about the end of the series.
Yeah.
If they lose game 4, the amount of pressure on Cleveland coming back home in game 5 is monumental. And we saw what happened last year. The lights were bright, the pressure of New York. That's when the Cavs collapsed. I don't think they really had that much pressure in games 1 and game 2, to be totally honest. We'll see how much progress this team's made from a mental standpoint in game 5 if they lose game 4 and come back 2-2. But I got my fingers crossed it doesn't even come to that. The Cavs can bounce back, rebound. It doesn't take much to play better than they played tonight, which is the good news. Like, they can't really play worse, so I'd expect a better performance. And if they do, there's no reason they can't beat this Orlando team in Orlando.
I have no reason to believe. And I'll put this in 2 faucets here. I don't believe that Orlando, at one point, they were shooting 40% from 3-point distance in tonight's game before, it just turned into a blowout. But I have no reason to believe that they're going to be able to sustain the level of 3-point shooting that they were able to do tonight. They were, even at home, they ranked very, very poorly in terms of 3-point percentage, in terms of 3-point makes. They were among the bottom of the league in both of those categories, as they are overall on for the season as a whole. Conversely, I would like to say that I believe Cleveland will get out of this abysmal shooting slump that they're in, but they haven't shown us that they are going to be able to do that just yet. We got to see something. And is it a JB thing? Is it just missed shots? Because I felt like there were some very, very makeable opportunities out there.
Tonight, I didn't like the looks. I thought in games 1 and games 2, they just missed a bunch of shots. Mm-hmm. And I saw this tweet. This is from from @IsaacOkoro fan club, who is a big Cavs stan, but this is just numbers. I'm going to run through Cavs 3-point shooting in this series player by player. You ready, Mack?
Sure.
Sam Merrill, 3 for 6, inconsequential threes.
Mm-hmm.
Darius, 41.2%. He's 7 of 17. Karis LeVert, 3 of 10. Isaac Okoro, 2 of 7. That's 28%. Evan Mobley, 3 of 11, but 1 for his last 9, 27%. Donovan Mitchell, 6 for 24. Max Strus, 2 of 14. George Niang, 1 of 10. You want to see a reason why the Cavs offense looks like shit? Right there. Now, some of them aren't good looks. Granted, they're not every one of those has been, a set-up situation, but big picture, you can't shoot that. Just like we said, hey, Orlando can't win a game if they shoot like they did in games 1 and 2. Cavs ain't going to win many games if they keep shooting like this. And they've had enough good looks that they shouldn't be missing at this high of a clip. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to miss shots, but Niang's had some good looks. Strus has had some good looks. Donnie's had some good looks, and no one can buy a bucket right now.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to Orlando's defense, obviously, because they are Suggs, some Jonathan Isaac, some of those other guys out there.
Elite. They got a couple of elite guys on defense.
Yeah, they have made life difficult at times during specific possessions for individual players, but there are good looks more often. I cannot tell you how, especially in games 1 and 2, how many good looks Niang got. He just in shots he normally knocks down, and Strus is the same way. But the difference between those two, in my opinion, has been that Max is added in other areas, right? Whether it be his rebounding, whether it be defensive area. And Niang has had his moments, right? Defensively, but up against Paolo, it's just a tough matchup for him. And we're clearly missing Dean Wade out there in that regard. But yeah, I mean, you can't shoot 24% from 3-point distance and 39% overall from the field and expect to beat your opponent. And it's not like Orlando was scorching the twine. They shot 35% from 3-point distance, but one of the areas where they consistently killed us tonight, which was to me uncharacteristic, was the rebounding battle, man. 51 to 32, and they got a gazillion second chance opportunities, and that aids when you have a decent defensive possession, and then you're allowing them to go up and get that offensive rebound and get another opportunity to knock down more shots. It's never going to end well.
No, and in the first quarter in particular, Mac, Orlando had 9 offensive rebounds and 13 second chance points in the first quarter alone. Orlando missed their first 6 threes tonight. I tweeted, and you can say I jinxed it, whatever. I was like, Orlando's a comically bad shooting team.
They were 0 of 8 from the field to start the game.
It was an objectively horrific start. And some of those bad misses led to long rebounds. It's not just on Allen and Mobley. The guards have to do a much better job rebounding too. I don't want this to sound like I'm pinning it all on the bigs. Rebounding is a team effort, especially on 3-point shots. The Cavs as a collective team did not rebound the ball well enough. But the first couple of threes Orlando made in the first quarter, which kind of opened the floodgates, came off second chance opportunities on long offensive rebounds to where the defense has to scramble out. They're not in position, and you get these wide open looks. They made a couple threes. That started getting the confidence up. They made more threes in the second quarter. It continued, but when you look at the final box score, they were 13 to 35 or something like that. Well, I had to close it because it's making noise, but they only made 13 threes. It wasn't like Miami, who made 23 last night to beat Boston. Like, if you allow a team to make 13 threes, it's 13 to 38, right?
13 to 37, 35% from 3-point distance tonight.
You feel pretty good defensively if you allow a team to shoot 37 threes, they only make 35%. I feel bad
good.
Time threes, and your offense was putrid, which is why you lost by 40. But if you don't allow those offensive rebounds, especially on those first couple in the first quarter, this game is completely different. And that's where I think the Cavs lost tonight, Mac, was they did not rebound. They had won the rebounding battle in the first 2 games. They lost by 19 tonight. But those early offensive rebounds that led to the open kickouts, which gave Orlando the confidence, sometimes it just takes one to go in for your whole team to feel like, okay, like we got this. And it was the open floodgates at that point.
Tell me, Mikey, that at certain points tonight didn't feel like last year's playoffs. I mean, there were specific points in the game where possessions were being generated off of some of these long rebounds, and either we just didn't, due to packing the paint with 3 or 4 guys at a time, we just weren't in proper position to get those long twos, or guys just simply weren't crashing the glass. But it certainly felt like one of those Knicks games last season. It was bad, man.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of it from a Knicks standpoint in terms of the rebounding. It will remind me, I did a whole thing on the show on Tuesday, Mac, that through 2 games, I thought Jarrett Allen in particular had done everything he could possibly do up to this point to kind of shed the soft label, right? And I made it very clear. You're not going to do it in 2 games. It has to happen over a series.
Yeah.
But we can't evaluate a whole series when they've only played 2 games. And he had played so well, and he had kind of changed, in my opinion, and being up there, though, I was at both games sitting in press row. They were wars. Like, they were physical games, and the Cavs didn't back down. And tonight, obviously, I'm back in Cleveland. I'm sitting on my couch watching the game. I didn't make the trip to Orlando. It just felt reminiscent of last season where they turtled. And I'm not saying that I don't want to say that diminishes what they did in the first 2 games, because once again, it's a 2-game sample size versus a 1-game sample size. But that fight and that kind of grit and passion and their ability to not just take a punch, but throw a punch back, I didn't see it until Marcus Morris and Tristan Thompson came in. But at that point, it was too late.
I felt like Morris has been played way too late. Like, I feel like JB really waited too long to pull the plug on Niang minutes when he clearly does not have it going on. And, clearly with missing Dean Wade out there, at the very least, you know what Morris can bring to the table from a defensive standpoint. And this, I am a fan of George Niang, but when a guy doesn't have it going on, you can just clearly tell. And I'm not trying to scapegoat Niang in particular because nobody shot the ball too well, but you do have other options off that bench. And if you're JB, you have to know when to utilize them. But man, one of the things that really, really stuck out to me over that first 2-game stretch, as you said, was Jarrett Allen. I mean, 38 rebounds over those first 2 games. And we know, as you said, you're not going to be able to shed any narrative over the course of 2 or 3 games. You have to do it over the course of an entire playoff run, if not, a few series.
Yeah.
My opinion hasn't changed on this Cavaliers team from a toughness standpoint. I do feel like they are miles ahead in that category, but I do have to wonder, like, is that confidence and that toughness, is it only at home? Does it stay at home? Does it travel?
No, it's a fair question. We talked about it on UCSS today, Mac, like the difference in home court advantage in the playoffs before tonight. And I'm not sure, did the Knicks beat Philadelphia? I'm not sure how that game ended.
I have not even checked on that. I don't even want to know.
But heading into tonight, home teams were 13-3 in the playoffs this season.
Philly is up 112-99 with 5:50 left. So
we'll add Orlando and Philly winning to that. Their home teams are 15-3 in the postseason. That's not a tiny sample size, and that's not a close scale. Like 15-3 is a 87% win percentage at home.
Right.
Teams, and it's more the role players than anything else, feel more comfortable at home. You saw Orlando's guys make shots they didn't make in Cleveland. You saw guys on Cleveland not make shots that they had made at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So it's not rocket science, but there's a comfortability with the role guys that step up and play. And I do think the Cavs have to go out and prove they can win a game on the road before anyone should feel confident this team has the ability to. They haven't shown us anything over the last 2 seasons, frankly, Mac. They were a bad road regular season team last year. They lost both games in New York. They were better on the road this season, but down the stretch, it was iffy. The whole team wasn't, frankly, that good in the month of March. And tonight, they got their ass kicked on the road. So I'm still a believer, but I'm a full believer when it's shown to me. I'm not just going to buy in on blind faith anymore because the evidence is there that this team, for whatever reason, just like the Browns defense this year, a different team at home versus on the road. And we need to see it. Like I need to see it now to fully believe it.
I think that's completely fair. I mean, for as optimistic as you and I both can sound at times, you can't just look at specific instances like tonight's game and ignore what you're saying. Just like we're saying, there's no positives you can take away from tonight's outing. We're still waiting on this team to prove that they can do it in both settings, both at home and on the road. And I have faith that they will be able to do that, but there are specific things that have to happen in order for that to be the case. They absolutely have to get more contributions outside of the role players, obviously, but the stars really have to step up too. I felt like, Paolo and company. Paolo finished with 31 points, 14 boards, and 5 assists tonight. And coming into the series, we knew that he was going to get his, right? And I know you talked about that ad nauseum about, Paolo is going to get his. You just have to make sure the guys around him do not. The guys around him got it tonight, and they haven't during the series.
Yeah, and I had people tweet at me all night like, hey, you still want Paolo to get his? Paolo took 26 shots and scored 31 points. You want that? That's perfect. It just exactly. You can't have Jalen Suggs score 24 points. You can't have Franz Wagner score 16. You can't have Cole Anthony and Markelle Fultz score 21 points combined. If Paolo wants to take 26 shots and he wants to take turn around, put your shoulder and you fade away jumpers over a contested hand, you live with that. He's going to make them. He's a great player. And he's 21 years old. He's got a chance to be really, really, really special. But he took 26 shots and scored 31 points.
A lot of those were long twos. A lot of mid-range attempts that
you just can't let the other guys kill you.
A lot of them were fairly contested looks. Some really solid defense that was played on a lot of his shots from the mid-range area. And there was a couple of different guys who had it going on from the mid-range area. But for whatever reason, they just had it going on tonight. And we do understand that sometimes it's just not your night. But you can't have this. This was just an abysmally bad performance offensively for the Cavaliers.
Mac, and this is the perfect comparison. Well, 2 things. A, I can't wait for you to put together the Paolo bucket montage that you always do, because I'm telling you, when you go through, of the 14 or 13 shots he made, I bet you 8 or 9 are going to be with a hand right up in his grill, and it's just a shot. Shit, he makes it. Like, what are you going to do?
Good defense, better offense,
Yeah.
like they say, man. And, yeah, I'm obviously gonna put that out tomorrow. I know prior to tonight's game, I think Evan Mobley had held Paolo
He's
to
2
2
of
of
10.
11. Yeah, 2 of 10.
Or
Yeah, 2 of
yeah,
10,
whatever
2
it
of
was.
11, one of those 2. And either way, some shitty shitty
Yeah.
percentages. But as a unit, I mean, they've struggled outside of Evan Mobley to really stay in front of him, really put a body out there. And he's 6'10". He's going to be able to shoot over just about anybody who's out there. And we know what his strengths are as an offensive player. He is an excellent driver of the basketball. He draws a ton of contact. Not necessarily the best passer, but he can still get his guys good looks.
He
With the
led the team in
gravity of the crease.
assists, which says something about the Magic not having a point guard, his ability, but also he led them in turnovers too. So give and take with Paolo.
It is definitely give and take. We know Franz and Paolo are the best drivers on that team. They have the ball in their hands a ton. The usage rate is pretty high for those two. I mean, it's a big reason why both of them are like top 50 in drives per game. But we know that if Paolo is going to get his, you cannot have these ancillary pieces being able to torch you as well. And if that's going to happen, you have to step up. You have to have an answer. And I just felt like the Cavs, they got punched in the mouth tonight, especially going into that first half or going into that second half. I was really, really looking for a response because I thought the close to the second quarter wasn't terrible, like on the last few possessions, but I felt like they were going to, after heading into the half with a 16-point lead, that Orlando hadn't yet walked away with the game. I was really looking for a response.
And here's the most frustrating thing, Mac. And I didn't say this on the UCSS show, and I'm mad I just thought of it now, but you're going to get this little nugget I hadn't thought of. Miami made 23 threes last night against Boston. 23 threes. Orlando made 13 tonight. Imagine Orlando made 10 more threes than they did tonight. And Boston lost by 10. They found a way to stay in it. They found a way to compete, scrap. They lost the third quarter by 9 points. They lost the fourth quarter by 4 points, but it was by no means a blowout. And Miami played the game of its series. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't think Boston fans are losing their minds for losing one game in a series when the other team played to about the peak of its powers, right? We're sitting here, and I think we're being very objective and fair about the situation. But there are going to be people who say the sky is falling, this team has no chance, it's over. Because the Cavs refuse to show a little bit of fight back despite Orlando giving them their best haymaker. I'm not sure Orlando can play better than they played tonight. I think this was about as well as Orlando can play. And the Cavs just took it. They fell down. The ref gave them a standing 8 count. And they just waved the white flag and tapped out. As opposed to another team in Boston, which composed differently, took a 23-point barrage from the Heat and kept it competitive and fought till the very end. I think that's, to me, what's the most disappointing part of this is there just wasn't that fight back. There wasn't the get back. There wasn't the, all right, that's what you got. Here's my counter. We never really got a chance to see that tonight. And I think that's a little disappointing in the big picture.
It is. We wilted for sure. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. And to your point, I don't really feel like Orlando can play much better than they have. In game 1, they shot 8 of 37 from 3-point distance. In game 2, 9 of 35. That both of those are under 26% from 3-point distance. Tonight, they did drill 13 and they shot 35%. But again, I just don't feel like it's sustainable. We saw it over the course of the 82-game regular season that they, no matter whether they're at home or on the road, one, they don't attempt a ton of triples, but they have had to overcompensate for the Cavs' ability to lock down the paint at times. So by virtue of that, they are having to shoot a ton more threes. They're averaging 6 more threes per game in the playoffs than they did in the regular season. And tonight, they knocked them down. I don't think that's going to be the case over the entirety of the rest of this series. But in saying that, just as bad as the Orlando Magic has shot, Cleveland has shot even worse. I mean, it's 28 of 103, man, 27%. It's piss poor. And there's only so much that individual players can do. Jarrett Allen can only do so much to patch some of these holes up out here. Donovan Mitchell, he still at certain points look like he's not operating at 100%. And we know that Jalen Suggs is a tremendous guard defender out there. So that's not helping. I don't know, man. I posed this question on my last pod, and I'm gonna ask it to you. The question originally was, what can the Magic do to overcome their dire lack of shooting? They did it tonight. They shot the ball well. What do the Cavaliers do to overcome their dire lack of shooting? Is it just as simple as just seeing a few go in?
I mean, yeah, that's the easy answer, but I'll give you a little more technical answer. I would like to see them. So Orlando made the adjustment, put Suggs on Mitchell. And I thought that really threw Mitchell off. I'm not sure why the Cavs weren't more ready and prepared for that situation. I feel like that was the easy adjustment to make after game one. Orlando didn't make it. So maybe JB and the staff just thought, okay, they're not going to make it. I felt a little not disappointed, but just a little surprised they didn't have a counter for that. If Suggs is the primary guard on Donovan, what I want to see Cleveland do to generate more looks is run some backside pin. Like, you don't need to set a screen up top if Jalen's the one hounding, because they're just going to drop off and you're essentially driving into a drop with Jalen coming over the top. It's going to be a weird angle. I don't love that. I would avoid setting up the high pick and roll. I would even use Donovan more as a decoy, let Darius try and set up some of the offense. And I think you have to attack down low. If Suggs is going to hound you from the midcourt line, essentially, and force you to set your offense up that far away from where you want to, well, the rest of the defense is going to be stretched out as well. Make a couple extra passes and find ways to get Jarrett the ball down low, find ways to get Evan the ball down low, and you have to trust those guys to be able to score on Wendell Carter Jr. and Paolo Banchero. Like, Paolo's a better offensive player than Evan Mobley, but Evan should be able to score on him with his back to the basket, or at least generate a decent look. Jarrett Allen shoots 60% from the floor. I know he's not a traditional back-to-the-basket post guy. Why not try and run some offense from those guys and have Jalen try and trail Donovan and or Darius off pin-down screens to the side? It would certainly help if Max Strus and George Niang and those ancillary guys would make some shots so Orlando couldn't just sag off them and pack the lane as much as they have been. But I think for the most part, I want to see them try to run a little offense from the high post with the bigs being the initiators, as opposed to having Donovan Mitchell try to navigate screens with arguably the best point of attack ball defender in the entire league in his right pocket from the second he crosses half court. I just feel like that's going to drain him. And for Donovan, who's coming off that knee injury, I think he needs to be able to sustain his energy levels for 4 quarters. Do you know what drains energy real quick? Having Jalen Suggs attached to your right hip as you're navigating and trying to set up your offense. So just to kind of save his energy and legs for the fourth quarter, try to run some offense through Evan and Jarrett, who both proved throughout the regular season they're more capable of making quick decisions and passes and running offense through them than we thought, at least I thought was possible last season. So I think that's the tactical adjustment I would want to see them make in game 4, but they're going to have to make shots too. That's really the easy answer. But the other one is, assuming they don't, what do I want to see?
Well, I mean, just to put a cap on your point about Suggs, I mean, during the course of the regular season, Suggs held Mitchell to 8 of 19. We know that he is about as good a guard defender as he can. Through the first 2 games of this series, it honestly felt like Suggs hadn't seen a lot of Mitchell. It was just 3 of 5. 3 of 5 is the possession count in regards to the field goals. But tonight, obviously, that changed. They adjusted. Credit to them for doing that. Jamal Mosley, awesome adjustment in that regard. But in reference to the bigs, like all season long, especially between Mack Strus and Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, we saw a lot of DHO work, especially from out on the perimeter or the high post. And I feel like if you can get that going again, you might be able to get some guys going. You might be able to get some better looks out there. And we know how good of a passer Jarrett Allen in particular is out of the short roll. You have to get some more ball movement in there. But at the end of the day, these dudes have to make shots. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You're not likely to be able to get away with that like you did in games 1 and 2 if the Magic are going to shoot 33 to 35% from the 3-point distance. You're probably going to end up losing.
Orlando shot 35% from 3 on the regular season. What they shot tonight was essentially what they had been throughout the regular season.
The difference in that, though, is the amount of attempts.
Yes.
If you're doing that, because Cleveland was 35.2% from 3-point distance, if I'm not mistaken. But the difference between these two teams is that Cleveland took the shot with a lot more volume. 10th, I believe, on the season in 3-point makes, up there around that area. They're not an especially efficient 3-point shooting team collectively, but they take the shot enough for that to be made up in that regard. And they go ahead.
Well, I just think the reason the volume's up is Cleveland's essentially saying that's the shot we want you to take. It's playing into their hand, and Orlando in the first 2 games took a ton of threes too. I got the box scores here. It took 39 attempts in game 2. No, I lied. It took 35 in game 2. It took 37 in game 1.
And 37 again tonight.
So, I mean, those are the shots Cleveland wants them to take. I said it earlier. I'll say it again. If they're going to make 13 to 37, I think Cleveland's going to say, hey, that's not bad. Like, we can live with that. But they shot today 50+% from the floor. Jalen Suggs was 9 of 11. It's like, that's the stuff that you just can't live with. And if Jalen Suggs is going to go 9 of 11, score 24 points, we need 30 from Darius. And the difference in point guard play, Jalen had 24, Darius had 5.
If you had to categorize, or if you had to give Darius Garland's play through 3 games a rank, what would it be?
He had a great stretch in game 2. End of the third quarter, early fourth. I thought he played a very good stretch. He had 11 of 13 points at one point.
Mm-hmm.
In game 1, he was okay. I thought tonight he was bad. So, okay, good stretch and bad. He's been...
Give it a letter grade. Let's hear the letter grade on that.
C, somewhere between a C- and a C.
Like, can you win this series with Darius Garland playing C-level basketball?
Yeah, if Orlando doesn't shoot like they did tonight, I guess you could theoretically. But, I mean, big picture, no. I mean, I like Darius Garland. I think this has been a season from hell from Darius Garland. It's hard to defend what he's done this season. I'm not selling my Darius Garland stock long-term. This season hasn't been good enough. But when one of your 2 allegedly best players, and remind you, he's the highest paid player on the team, and I know money doesn't matter, but hey, this guy's a max level player. He signed the biggest contract in the history of the Cavs. He has a bigger contract than any contract LeBron James ever signed with this team. That comes with certain expectations. I only bring up the contract to give you what I would expect from a player of that caliber. And he has not delivered anywhere near that expectation this season. He was an all-star 2 years ago. He got paid to be an all-star. He wasn't close to being an all-star this season, and his numbers in the playoffs and what we've seen through 3 games with our eyes, Mack, doesn't match up to a guy who is the highest paid player on the team, who has the expectations of being a guy you can count on in these moments. I'm not selling my stock, but big picture, you have certain expectations that come with a certain price tag. If Darius Garland's numbers are being put up by someone like Sam Merrill, it's great. But Darius Garland's not Sam Merrill. Darius Garland needs to be all-star DG for this Cavs team to have any chance of competing with the big dogs in the Eastern Conference. And through 3 games, outside of a 6-minute stretch in the middle of game 2, we haven't seen nearly a good enough version of DG for this Cavs team to reach its full potential. At least that's how I see it.
No, that's completely fair, completely valid. When you sign, no matter the type of seasons you've had, injuries notwithstanding, when you have a contract of that level, there are always going to be a certain level of expectations that are carried along with that, especially come the playoffs. Now, while we believe that Cleveland has what it takes to overcome their 3-point shooting deficiencies in this series against a team like Boston or Miami, oh my God, Darius Garland is going to have to play 2 or 3 levels above what he's been able to play at this point in time. You're not going to be able to get away with this level of production from him for long. If not, you're probably going to move into the offseason looking to evaluate just about everybody on this team, pending Donovan Mitchell's decision. But at the end of the day, man, I have to take this one game at a time. Game 3 sucked ass. Cavaliers were terrible tonight, but that is not my overarching feeling about this team. I feel like they will respond in game 4, regardless of the fact that it's not at home. But again, I mean, they have to prove it, right? They have to prove it. Game 4 is pivotal now. I
almost feel that we're going to learn. There's obviously a lot of questions surrounding this Cavs team, right?
Right.
I'm not saying we're going to get every answer in game 4, but I'm going to feel a lot better about my evaluation of this team based on how they come out in game 4. If they come out and lay an egg,
Mhm.
I'm selling my stock. Like, I'm not saying
wait, selling your stock on the season
just the team
or
in general, like just
okay,
the
okay,
makeup of
gotcha.
this team. If they come out after what we saw tonight and lay another egg on the road in game 4, they may
Mhm.
still win the series, but I'm gonna have a hard time buying back in to believe this team has the legitimate mental makeup of a team that can compete in the Eastern Conference for more than just a first round playoff win.
That they can be a contender,
Yeah, to be a
essentially.
legit contender.
Okay.
They can still win the series, but I'm just saying big picture.
Mhm.
If you come out, get your ass kicked, and then to come out again, knowing your back's against the wall. If they lose, it's one thing. But I'm saying to get their ass kicked like they did tonight, have no fight, just play with a lack of emotion that I thought we saw tonight. I'm just gonna have a hard time believing that the leadership needed to be and reach a level I think the talent on this roster dictates.
Mhm.
Not gonna believe it's there. If this team comes out and responds the way I think you think they can, the way I know they're capable of doing,
Right.
then this loss is a blip on the radar. You lose on the road in the playoffs. It happens. You don't usually get your ass kicked like this, but a loss on the road, especially when a team is down 2-0, a young team coming home, feeling the energy, living off the crowd, like it happens, then it's just a blip on the radar. But if it happens twice in a row, my red flag meter goes off the damn chart.
I think essentially it's the old question with JB Bickerstaff, right? Can he get the most out of these guys when it matters the most? Can he respond? Can he adjust? Things of that nature. Some of that is on the players. Obviously, they're on the court. They have to do the bulk of the work. But this is could end up being a very poor reflection on JB. Tonight certainly was in many respects. I felt like JB pulled the starters too early. That's just me. I don't know how everybody else out there feels. I did honestly feel like he pulled those guys a little too early. But overall, to your point, if they come out in game 4, they fail to respond, they lose, whether or not they win the series or not, we're going to learn a lot about this team, about their
Yeah.
resolve, about how much heart they have, about how much toughness they have, and whether or not they are able to step up when the time matters most. I mean, simple as that. It doesn't matter who their second round opponent is. If they go out in game 4 and they get punked the way that they did tonight, I don't think anybody's really going to feel confident in the ability of this team to advance past round 1, myself included.
I don't know how you could. I frankly don't know how you could. And listen, I've been on the wrong side of a lot of blowouts in basketball. My high school team sucked. We knew we couldn't compete with a lot of teams. My freshman year in college, we were not good. We fought. We were much better my sophomore, junior, and senior years. But going into a game after getting blown out, you kind of knew, and my high school team, like I said, we sucked. We knew we were going to lose again. But there was like at least an ounce of fight of, all right, let's try to have some pride, and then we just were outmatched. The Cavs aren't in a position to be outmatched physically or from a skill standpoint in the series. And that's why I'm just saying if game 4 is a repeat of game 3, the mental component just isn't there. And that falls on coaching. And then part of it does have to fall on Donovan and Darius and Jarrett and Evan.
Set the tone.
Yeah, to set the tone and be the guys. Because a coach can only do so much. You can have the best coach in the world. I played for Jim O'Brien, who won National Coach of the Year in 99 at an E3 school. We had the coaching advantage over every team we played. We weren't great because the talent wasn't great, but we had the coaching advantage. As good of a coach as OB was, we were undermanned in several situations, and we just couldn't compete with some teams. That's not the case with the Cavs. So JB can do as much as he possibly can, but then it comes down to the players to not only execute, but show the necessary fight. JB can't fight for them on the court. You know what I'm saying? He can argue, and he certainly does plenty of arguing with the refs throughout the game. In person, it's nonstop. I don't know how the man has a voice. I frankly have no idea.
He's going to turn into Doc Rivers here pretty soon.
It's incredible. Like it really is nonstop every time out. I would hate to be a ref in a Cleveland Cavaliers game because JB's on the sideline just chewing you out every single play.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's on the players. Step up, make shots. And if you're not making shots, lock the fuck in on defense. Every 50-50 ball has to be yours. Every rebound, body on a body, box out. Mo Wagner can't be getting 3 offensive boards. Wendell Carter Jr. shouldn't be out muscling Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen down low. It's a 5-man situation to rebound. It's a 5-man situation to defend. Offense will come. And if you got to win a dogfight 83-80, so be it. So be it. But it can't go down, and the effort can't be as poor as it was tonight.
They have failed to crack the 100-point barrier in each of these first 3 games, if I'm not mistaken.
That's
And
correct.
that's got to change. That it has to change. And if it doesn't, you at least have to perform well in other areas. And tonight, I just didn't feel like they performed well in 80, right? I do want to ask this before we get ready to head out here. Obviously, we know some of the bigger changes that have been made to this Cavaliers team since last year's series. But this, to me, at least coming into this series, it felt like the tailor-made opponent for what the Cavaliers do best, right? We lock down the paint. We're not an especially great three-point shooting team, but we can tread water now as opposed to last season in many respects. Conversely, Orlando, they kind of play right into what we do well. So at certain points, I kind of find myself wondering, well, how much of game 1 and 2 is like JB Bickerstaff actually, adjusting and performing well himself from a coaching standpoint, in contrast to Orlando just purely playing into what we do well. Oftentimes during games like this where we see a blowout from this team, I do find myself questioning whether or not JB Bickerstaff is really improved, but I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to be the guy to say JB's got to go, but tonight did not leave a good taste in my mouth. I have to admit that.
No. Well, last year, I think his hands were tied. Like they were playing Jetty Osman and Danny Green on the wings. Like at the end of the day, I don't think any coach was going to win that series based on the talent the Cavs had to work with. This year, he has all the ingredients to put together a good recipe or put together a good dish. Last year, it was like, Chopped. Do you watch Chopped ever? You watch the Food Network?
Yes.
Yeah, he had like a Chopped basket last season as terms of a roster. Like random basket. Oh, you have a Jetty Osman, a Denny Green, and a Lamar Stevens.
A lot of random pieces that did not fit, especially off the bench, right?
Yeah.
Like the reserves did not a lot to work with. So that's understandable.
No shooting. It's like, hey, make us an entree, but you have no protein. Like, what are you going to do? So this year they have the ingredients. It hasn't come together in the way I think makes this team most successful.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it for a stretch, that 18-2 stretch. They lucked into playing with one big. And then Mobley and Garland came back and they still went 9-1 down the stretch. Like they found ways to integrate those guys into what was working without overkilling what had worked so well. Part of what worked so well was during that stretch, Donovan Mitchell was playing like a top 5 player in the NBA. It was the best stretch of basketball in his career. And then he gets hurt. And if your best player is obviously hurt, your whole team's going to struggle. And Donovan, who's looked healthier in the playoffs than he did down the stretch of the regular season, I still don't think he's at 100%. And you saw it tonight against Jalen Suggs. Donovan had no issue getting past Gary Harris in the first 2 games. Mm-hmm. He had no issue getting past Gary Harris in the beginning of game 3 tonight. And they put Jalen Suggs on him. And I'm not saying he can't get past him. He just has to work a lot harder, and it takes him a lot more time to get into his offense with an elite point of attack defender in his hip. So, yeah, JB's not without fault here. I think he's done some good things in the series, especially early on. I did a whole breakdown. They've added some wrinkles to their offense to try and get some secondary slips into open looks to try and get either Gary Harris or Jalen Suggs to have to go around 2 screens as opposed to 1 screen to chase the ball handler. But JB isn't the one missing the shots. And at the end of the day, if you go back, and I'll do a whole breakdown over the weekend, I have to see how many shots from game 3 were good looks that just missed, or were the Cavs forcing a ton. I thought today was their worst offensive performance from an execution standpoint. But in games 1 and 2, they got good looks for the most part. Over 50% of their shots, Mack, in the first 2 games of the series. Tonight, not included.
Right.
According to NBA tracking data, were considered open. Half your shots are considered open. You're just not making them. They were 1 of 17 on corner threes in the first 2 games. Like, that's the best shot in basketball. That's the shot you work for. Mm-hmm. And you go 1 of 17. JB is not without fault. Trust me, I am not saying JB's without fault. But I do think sometimes he gets blamed for things that aren't in his control. And 1 of 17 from the corner is something JB can't control. Those are shots you work for. Those are shots you want. Those are shots you game plan for. It's up to Max Strus and George Niang and Darius Garland and Isaac Okoro and Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, et cetera, to make those shots. It ain't on JB. And those guys haven't come through for JB in that regard.
I think that's completely fair. I mean, at the end of the day, though, we all know who is going to fall on the sword.
Yeah.
We know who's going to be the first man out of here. Oh, man, it's just I hate games where we have nothing good to talk about. I truly do. It brings me down, but I can't ignore the obvious, right? Tonight sucked. Nothing good to really talk about. No positives really to pull from. But we look ahead to game 4 and hopefully the Cavs can rebound literally and figuratively. And you hope for the best. I still am a believer in this team, but as you put so eloquently earlier, game 4 is really going to tell us probably the most about this Cavs game of any Cavs game all season, just because of the stakes of where they're at right now and what this could potentially mean moving forward. You have any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
Real quick. I guess I knew it, but until I said it out loud, 1 of 17 on corner threes in games 1 and 2 is putrid. Like George Niang was such. They brought George Niang because he shot 46% on corner threes last season. It was third in the NBA. 1 of 17 on corner. I tweeted it out and it didn't really register without saying it out loud.
It just sounds worse when you say
that's like 7% on shots you want. They won 2 games with that, Mac. They won 2 games despite shooting 1 of 7. That's games 1 and 2. So final thought, game 4 is going to tell us everything we need to know. This team has the veteran leadership, especially with Tristan and Marcus now in the rotation or, in the locker room with a guy like Max Strus and George Niang who have been through these postseason battles. There's no excuse for them to come out flat here. There's zero excuse. And if it happens, we're going to know all we need to know about this Cavs team. They may be able to beat Orlando, but that's the extent of what this Cavs team could do if they don't come out and show some serious fight. Not even win the game, but show some serious fight. They should win. I'm going to pick them to win, which may be crazy. But we saw Orlando bounce back after 2 bad performances on the road. Cleveland can absolutely do the same thing. Tonight was terrible. Not a single positive takeaway, but they're still the better team than the Orlando Magic.
More talent. We hope better coach, right? I think we all collectively believe that they have what it takes to get it done, but they have to show us. They have to prove it to us. That said, as I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. Just wanted to throw this out there. Again, I'm probably going to plug it every single episode that I have now. I did recently create a Patreon to help make up for some of the demonetized videos that I get because I use so much NBA content, right? And so some of that stuff gets flagged. If you want to help support it, brother,
pain, Mac. But hey, pay up. Mac does a great
if you want to help support, anything you want to chip towards that would be great. If not, that's okay too. I'll still create the content. I love doing it. That said, I'm just hoping for the best, man. That's really all I can do. I have cautious optimism at this point, but my faith is not shaken.
Game 4. We're going to learn a lot Saturday, Mac. Saturday, 4 o'clock, we're either going to feel way better or we're going to feel way worse. And there's no real in between.
Bro, early start time, 1 o'clock, I believe, on Saturday. And my day is either going to be good or it's going to be bad.
It's on ESPN, by the way. We are off the NBA TV Bally's debacle. It's back on ESPN. With the same broadcast team we had in game 1. So I didn't have to deal with that in game 1, Mac. I don't know what you said about the broadcast team. I was there for game 1.
The technical difficulties in that game. Honestly, that was nice.
It was kind of cool, especially because Strus hit his only 3 of the damn series right off the bat, and the crowd was electric.
And then Donovan comes down and does the same, right? But it was pure basketball sounds, just feet squeaking on the floor, basketballs dribbling, and then the net. It was awesome. Honestly, they should have an option like that to watch games.
I actually agree. I would watch that over. I'm not picky with broadcasters, but certain people do annoy me. I'll just be totally honest. Certain people annoy me. And if there was an option just to turn them off, I would. I absolutely would. And as soon as we hang up, I will tell you who I can't stand. But
I was gonna ask you.
I don't want to say it on air. I'll tell you off. I don't want to get anyone in trouble, or I don't want to get myself in trouble but I'll tell you after. But yeah, there's certain people I really do not like listening to.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Go Cavs. Have a good night.